Why is it so important for every single entrepreneur to have a really clear idea of what redemption means? Well, we're going to answer 4 really pivotal questions all around redemption and redemptive processes that is absolutely critical for every single entrepreneur or anyone who's building anything for that matter, whether it's a family to a business, to understand the concepts of redemption. So let's begin by looking at the first question. Why is redemption such an important concept? At the core of the concept of redemption is this basic understanding of redemption is moving something or someone from a state of flaw, loss, death, or hate into a state of recovery, empowerment, life, and love. Now, redemption is often thought of in a religious context. And in particular, in Christianity, redemption and the concept of redemptive is very key and core to the understanding of Christianity. The belief is that Jesus redeemed us, his followers, and people who believe that he is who he said he was, redeemed us from a state of sin into a state of righteousness through his process, his life, and his death, and his resurrection. Now, that is, in Christianity, redemption. We have been redeemed. But redemption is not just a spiritual concept, and it's not just a religious concept. In fact, it's at the core of life itself. Now, this is a very simplistic drawing of the life cycle of a tree. You have the death of a tree, but you've got the birth through a seed into a sapling, into a growing tree, into a mature tree that produces more seed, and then it dies and the seed gives more potential, and so on and so forth. This life cycle is incredibly redemptive. And it has in its nature, in its core, this redemptive cycle. We're going from a state of loss and death and decay into a state of recovery, empowerment, life, and love. And that goes continuously round and round through seed, sapling, mature plant, back to a dead plant that has produced more seed, and so on and so forth. Why is redemption such an important concept? Redemption is integral because it encapsulates the idea that mistakes and damage, whether personal, social, or environmental, can be addressed and repaired. It provides a framework for thinking about progress and improvement that is inclusive of forgiveness and growth rather than purely punitive measures, right? So it's not just talking about getting rid of death and for all, but it's this sense of restoring, redeeming what was lost into something which can be still. It also inspires individuals and communities to strive for a higher standard of ethics and living, promoting a more compassionate understanding and proactive approach to challenges and failings. Again, it's not just the concepts and areas of religion that look at redemption or redemptive objects or things. You know, the spiritual redemption we can see as restoration of relationships, hope and renewal. But there's also personal redemption, which is growth and development, healing and well-being. Social redemption, which is restorative justice, community reintegration. And then cultural and historical redemption, which is correcting history wrongs, preservation of values, and then, of course, environmental redemption, which is restoration and conservation. The concept and the ideas of redemption are deep within all of life. We can see it everywhere. We just need to look outside and look at creation, and we see redemption in all of creation. So that's why redemption is such an important concept. In the conversation around entrepreneurship then, and we're building a product, say, what is a redemptive product? This is really fun, to be able to kind of think through the ideas of really what makes something redemptive rather than just a product. What makes something a redemptive product? This is a model and a framework which is going to look at what makes a great product and also a redemptive product. Now, this framework looks at these 5 elements that need to exist for there to be a great product. So the first element, the base layer of any product, is it has to fulfill a problem. It has to be useful. Usefulness is fundamental for something to be a great product. The next layer, its use is easy to explain. So therefore, it's explainable, right? If you have something that it fulfills a problem, but it's really, really difficult to explain, it might be a good product, it might be a necessary product, but is it a great product? Probably not. It's simple to understand and use. So simplicity is also intrinsic to what makes a really great product. Now, I'm going to use this example of a nail clipper, okay, that you can see. Here's a very simple, mundane, everyday nail clipper, right? It has a use, right? And it's actually, it's pretty tough to cut nails other than using a nail clipper, which is why you'll find these in pretty much every single home. It pretty much does one thing, and it does it really, really well. And it's really easy to explain, and it's really simple. Okay, so it fits those three layers of what makes a great product. The next layer of what makes a great product, it's got to be scalable. If it's scalable, each new user increases the product margin. Now, the last step in this of what makes really, really great products, it's a habit-forming product. Nespresso, for example, it's a fabulous example of something that has gone through these 5 layers that makes a great product, and that's why it's been so successful. Right? So these are the 5 layers. We're looking to see what's a redemptive product. We've got to go in depth here and really kind of refine and define these 5 layers. So we're going to go down and actually first start by looking at what would be an exploitative product. When we're looking at these 5 layers, with the first one, it exploits a human vulnerability. So let's take something which is packed full of sugar, right? We love sugar. But a product, it does fulfill a problem. It fulfills hunger or thirst, or associated to what it creates around the brand. I don't know. It could be like Red Bull, for example. But it exploits a human vulnerability. We can become so addicted to sugar that that's a human vulnerability. So that's an exploitative product at the base layer. The next one, it keeps harmful elements a secret, right? So it explains what it is, but an exploitative product at that layer will keep harmful elements a secret. The next one, built-in vulnerabilities for profit. So a one-use razor comes to mind for this. So yes, it's simple, but its simplicity is actually part of its profitability. So it's actually got built-in vulnerabilities. That means it's only going to last a short amount of time, and you're going to have to go back and buy another one. Next one, squeezes the supply chain. So it is scalable, but only because the demand and the power of the demand squeezes the producer and squeezes the supply chain to make it cheaper and forces it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. The next layer is addictive and monopolization. So that's at that top layer where it's habit forming. It's caused habit out of the fact that there's no way to be able to do something without using this particular product. It's monopolized that environment, that ecosystem, and therefore it's an exploitative product by nature. Even though it does all the things well, but in this last area, there's no way around it, and therefore it's created monopolization. That's how we define a great but exploitative product. Now here's the next one. This is where a lot of us would aim for, and this is a great thing if we can get this far through to an ethical product. So how it's better than an exploitative, at this layer, it fulfills a base human need, right? And that's it. It doesn't add in anything. It doesn't exploit a vulnerability. It just gives us a base human need. It uses guilt in explanation. So that's sometimes something with the ethical side of where you're guilted into actually the way that it's explained its use, right? you need us and we are a great product because we're better than this other one for these reasons, right? And that's trying to come against the exploitative and therefore prove its ethicalness by explaining how to use it, even though it's actually quite complicated. But because you can guilt the buyer into using it, therefore uses ethical means to get over that dip. It's natural and safe for humans. So again, really simple, natural and safe. Price, open prices and a give back scheme, right? So buy this and we'll give something to someone who has a need. Or we're going to be really transparent. This is how much it costs in each part of the journey, right? So that's ethical business, an ethical product. And then this last one is it builds communities, it builds these cult followings, mainly around the brand, but because it's ethical and because it's a good product, it gives this good feeling to us as the buyer, as a purchaser, as a consumer. We'll keep following these brands and keep following these products because they are ethical, right? So the ethical product, it's not bad. It's definitely not exploitative, but it's not redemptive. Now I want to go through a third layer here. This is really what it goes to when it comes to something which is truly moving us from a state of flaw, loss, death, and hate into this state of recovery, empowerment, life, and love, right? Not just, I would argue that ethical is obvious. It's kind of base layer, of course. And it's only that ethical is a standard to try and reach because our society and who we are as people have been so impacted by greed and destruction. But the way that we consume and the way that we produce is that ethical is seen as being impressive. It's only proof that there's so much abuse in the system. There's so much exploitation in the system. Actually, redemptive and a redemptive product is really our goal and really our aim. And we'll explore it further to be able to see why. It's because of the way that we're designed. But let's look at this. Usefulness expands human creativity. So it's not just around fulfilling a problem, but it goes more than just fulfilling a problem. It actually expands and celebrates human creativity. It celebrates human ingenuity. In the way that it's explained, it's so clever and yet also so simple. But it's so clever that it actually, you kind of go, wow, whoever made that, whoever created that that's amazing. It celebrates human ingenuity. It has a complete use cycle. So not only is it simple, but every single part of its unit, its packaging, its use cycle is complete in the sense that it has as little waste as there possibly can be in the way that it's used and in the way that it's sold. So that's really a redemptive product. And to really kind of think about these things as someone who creates product and is an entrepreneur, that's a new level of really kind of thinking through every single part of the life cycle and the use cycle of every part of the product. Scalability, it uses the influence that it's gained to promote all users. Now that's quite rare, but there are some examples. Companies that bigger they get, the more that people win, the user actually wins. It's not a win-loss, it's a win-win. And this last area is that actually promotes healthy family rhythms. Now, I've deliberately put in family rhythms here rather than just human rhythms, because family is at the very core of our society. And so if it's actually promoting rhythms of a family, it's the best type of habits that you can actually form. Really challenging steps to go from just something which is a great product to something that is redemptive. These are the elements of these 5 layers that we're really, really aiming for. So back to our questions. What is a redemptive product? Those things of those 5 layers that I've talked about in the redemptive column, that's what defines a redemptive product. But then the next question, why build a redemptive product? Well, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is back to who we are as people. Going back to the words of Jesus, when he was asked what's the best commandment, Jesus' response to that is he said, love the Lord your God. And he was actually quoting from the Shema, which is the old Hebrew prayer in Deuteronomy. But he was quoting from that, and he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. He's in essence saying, look, if you want to love your Creator, he was telling his followers and people who were listening to him that you're basically made up of 4 parts. And you've got to use all those 4 parts in a way of being able to love God. We are made up of 4 parts. Whether you believe Jesus and the words that he said, it's obvious when we begin to look into this that these are our 4 parts. We're made up of a heart, a soul, a mind, and strength. Or another way you could put this is vitality or oomph, energy. So, what is the heart? We are driven by desire and passion, and shaped not just for the thoughts but also by emotion. Our hearts make us vulnerable and compassionate, often causing us to be selfless, irrational, and altruistic, right? So it's both good and bad. There's elements of our heart which is for us and also can work against us. But it's the house of both emotions, passions, and drive. Okay, so let's move over to soul. How do we define the soul? We have a depth of self that is uniquely ours, recognizably different from any other, an inner reality that is only partly available to others. Our thoughts, feelings, and motivations build together the unique sense of self. So the soul here, that unique sense of identity, my soul, you could think of it as the ego. It's the seat of your emotions, your intent, your intellect. You can see that they're all kind of interconnected. You can't really pull these 4 parts apart because we're designed to be whole people. And if we start living without a certain part of these really intact or really kind of coming to the table, we begin to fall apart, quite literally. Or we begin to just be not a whole person. We don't really feel that we're all there. The mind, we are capable of reflection, remembrance, interpretation, and analysis. We are naturally curious and have a hunger for knowledge and understanding. Our curious thoughts make us willful players in our world of endless possibility and endeavor. The mind is the place of the will, the rational, and the intellect. And then lastly is the strength. We are capable to apply great energy and muchness to our work and play. We are not invincible and often lack physically when compared to other creatures. However, we are unmatched in the diversity and complexity of movement we can achieve if we apply training and discipline. Going back to the question is, why do we need to create redemptive products? Well, it's because of this. It's because we're such integrated people. We're designed for redemptive processes. We're so intricate. Our hearts, our souls, our minds, and our strength were fragile. And so we need things to be of a redemptive cycle, to move us as a society, as people, as a person, through this place of potential and growth and maturity, and then greater potential, because we are frail, we will die. And so the fact that we're producing things that are actually exploitative are actually killing us. They're killing our strength. They're killing our mind. They're killing our emotions. They're killing our heart and our desire. We only need to dig under the surface just a little bit and realize that all of these things are so fragile, and anyone around us is suffering from not being able to feel the full emotions that they need to, or feeling overwhelmed, not being able to have a clear and conscious mind, not having strength, being in disease and sickness. And then our desires, feeling like we just don't have the heart to be able to move forward. We don't have passion. We can't really feel the drive. There's a real need for our products, the things that we make and create, to be by nature meet the whole person. So we're going to bring this all together now and answer our 4th question. Because it's all well and good to be talking around this lofty stuff around thinking of like, yeah, sure, we're made up of heart, soul, mind, strength, and we're gonna try and make products that are redemptive and not exploitative. All of that, fine, great. But what about, how do we test? How do we really know if something is a redemptive product? Well, there is a way to do that also, and we're going to look at that. And here's another framework. It's pretty simple. There are just 4 very specific, really insightful questions. 2 of them speak to promises and threats, 2 threats. There's these phrases that we can uncover the promises and the threats. Again, we're coming back to our design. So that's why you can see down the center here of this framework, it's got heart, soul, mind, and strength. And for each of the questions, you're going to look at each of these elements of the whole person, right? So we're going to look at promises and threats to the whole person. So this is how it works. We insert the specific item, right? This is the tool, the instrument, the product, the service, whatever it might be. We insert it here and we say, with such and such a product, my heart will now be able to, right? So this is a promise. We kind of assess, what's it going to promise our heart? What's it going to bring? Our heart will now be able to. And then our soul will now be able to. Our mind will now be able to. Our strength will now be able to. So you look down here and see, does this product impact our heart and will let our hearts be able to do something? What promise does this product give us? And we write it down here in this space in line with the heart. The next question is, will now no longer have to. So with X product, my heart, soul, mind, strength will now no longer have to. So that's another promise. And then threats, there's 2 sentences for the threats. With X product, my heart, soul, mind, strength will now no longer be able to. And then with X, my heart, soul, mind, strength will now have to. Let's take an example. The iPhone as a product. Really straightforward. All of us knows what an iPhone is, or we could say a smartphone, right? So here's some promises that the iPhone gives us. With an iPhone, my heart will now be able to foster close bonds via apps with anyone, anywhere. Fantastic promise, right? So that's the promise of the iPhone to my heart. With an iPhone, my soul will now be able to express creativity through diverse apps and channels. Wow, look at all this creativity that I can now do through my iPhone. I can express myself with images and photos and voice notes and whatever, numerous times a day. Fantastic promise. With my iPhone, my mind will now be able to access vast amounts of useful information instantly, right? That was never available to someone about 15 years ago. With an iPhone, my strength will now be able to track health, exercise, and vital physical information via the apps. Wow, fantastic. I don't need to go to the doctor all the time. I can actually just keep track of all this data, sophisticated information about what my heart rate is doing and so on and so forth, all because I have an iPhone. Other promises. With an iPhone, my heart will now no longer have to feel socially isolated or alone. I'll have multiple ways to follow my desires. With an iPhone, my soul will now no longer have to miss out on spiritual, emotional, artistic, or mental growth opportunities. Again, fantastic. There's just so much available. With an iPhone, my mind will now no longer have to remember minor and mundane details. Yeah. Notifications will tell me what to do, tell me when to wake up, tell me what to eat, tell me when to do this, when to pay my bills. With an iPhone, my strength will now no longer have to engage in manual tasks, right? So it's going to switch on my lights for me. It's going to get to do loads of stuff that's just mundane. It can buy my groceries, right? And have it delivered. But what about the threats? What are the threats? So those are the promises, but what are the threats to my heart, soul, mind, and strength? With an iPhone, my heart will now no longer be able to easily unplug from demands or expectations from people, right? So that's the flip side of always being able to connect, but now everyone else is also going to always be able to connect with me. With an iPhone, my soul will now no longer be able to avoid digital distractions and opinions that have no relevance to my normal life, right? Social media, we all know all about that, and it affects our souls, our feelings, our emotions. With an iPhone, my mind will now no longer be able to avoid information overload. With an iPhone, my strength will now no longer be able to dodge the threat of a sedentary life, right? That's a real threat. And then lastly, with an iPhone, my heart will now have to handle constant notifications and distractions from good and bad desires. My soul will now have to learn new skills to balance online and real life presence. With an iPhone, my mind will now have to keep up with new tech, trends and updates just to be safe. With an iPhone, my strength will now have to manage screen time effects on my life, right? So you can see these very simple questions by looking at the whole person and asking these 4 just simple questions of the product. Here's another example that I looked at with LinkedIn. You just stick the tool or the product into this space, and then you can answer these questions and think creatively around how this promise will affect these 4 different parts of who you are, and how these threats will affect these 4 different parts of who you are. How do we test a redemptive product? That's the way we test a redemptive product, through this simple framework. Right, so you can take a screenshot. I will get rid of my face. You can then take a screenshot and use this to be able to look at the promises and the threats of the whole person regarding the products and the services and the tools that we use. That's how we're going to be able to test the things that we have if they are really a redemptive product. Cool. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.